Hey everybody, Mike Naso here from podweather.com with an update on the tropics, and we do have Invest Area 92L still sitting now north of the Leeward Islands and well to the east and northeast of Puerto Rico, and the actual low center, it depends on what you're looking at. There was a weak low center here, and then there's kind of a mid-level center here, and the entire system's chugging along towards the west-northwest at a pretty good clip. Now, when we look the last several hours, you could definitely see the convection has been on the decrease recently, but the system has been spiking out and fanning out and getting a little bit more favorable. And even though we had a NOAA aircraft and the Air Force recon out there and they couldn't find anything, what they did find was a very weak center out here and then a strengthening mid-level center in here, which means that once that mixes down to the surface, either later tonight or tomorrow, we'll likely get the center somewhere in this general region moving west-northwestward in this general area over the next several days. Again, you can see it definitely fanning out, trying to get better organized. Now, as far as the rainfall for the islands, it's pretty meager, but definitely showing up there on the Martinique radar as the system pulls on off towards the west-northwest. Some rotation there as well. Now, the models, they're all over the place with this system. Here's the NAM model. It shows it by tomorrow, 24 hours sitting here, organizing into a depression north of Hispaniola. Within 48 hours by Saturday, a strengthening tropical storm. By the way, if it gets named, it'll be named Faye. And then by the time Sunday rolls around, the NAM shows it finally becoming a hurricane. And then by Monday, a powerful hurricane near the Abaco Islands up there, moving straight north. And that has been a trend. The models yesterday were pretty good in agreement towards Florida and the Gulf. Then they kind of trended a bit north. Now some are trending back west. I'll show you that in just a second. The other model that we're looking at now is the GFDL, and that's 5 days from now, a Category 4 hurricane making landfall on the central Florida coastline. That would be a very, very horrific situation, but it's happened before, and you always have to watch out. It's August, waters are very warm. I'll talk about that too. The HWRF model makes this system a Category 5, but doesn't make landfall. It shreds the Bahamas and parallels the Florida coast, one of the worst case scenarios we could ever imagine. A Category 5 hurricane paralleling the very populated Florida east coast. Takes it down to 920 millibars. If that came ashore, that would tie it with Katrina as the third strongest hurricane ever to hit our country. Let's hope this doesn't pan out for sure. Now, the Canadian model was, it says in 5 days, not a Cat 5, off the Florida coast. Instead, a weakening system over eastern Cuba. So there's a lot of difference there. As far as the no-gaps, north of Cuba, near the Keys in 5 days, moving into the Gulf of Mexico. See? So what's the consensus? Well, the consensus is something very close towards the coastlines and then gradually pulling northward, generally paralleling Florida. And in that, you have the HWRF, the GFDL, the GFS way up here, and then you have, of course, as I mentioned, the no-gaps and the Canadian moving it down here into the Gulf. So if you had to draw a cone of uncertainty, it would be as far north as here and as far south as here, which means right in the middle, which is very close to the coastline, the Turks, Caicos, Bahamas, and then up towards southeast Florida would be what we may be looking at by the 4 to 5 day time frame, which means by early next week, folks along the southeast coast of the United States, especially Florida, should be very, very carefully overlooking their hurricane plans because this system is going to have a pretty good environment. You can see the upper level winds here are currently pretty favorable over it, and then they're only going to get more favorable over time. You can see that we have basically this very favorable pattern over here, over Cuba, and then the one over the system, and that's kind of just going to merge, and we're going to have one big ridge of high pressure over the system, and that's going to be very, very favorable for development. Now, as far as waters are concerned, they only get warmer as it gets towards the Bahamas. In fact, the Gulf Stream here, the Bahamas, extremely warm. So we could, if we did have a hurricane here with a well-defined inner core and an eye wall, we would likely have a good shot at rapid development, and that's what the NAM and the HWRF and the GFDL show, and that's not a good sign. Very explosive development in the Bahamas from those computer models. Now, further out, we still do have this tropical wave we've been watching moving off and more about to move off. and anything could develop. The GFS has a hurricane striking the East Coast coming from this tropical wave here, so we're going to have to watch this carefully the next several days. In the eastern Pacific, this is Iselle, and Iselle is a weak tropical storm. It should weaken beyond depression status the next few days, and you can see that's pretty ragged sitting here in the eastern Pacific Ocean. So that'll do it this time for the tropics, and I'll see you next time, and we'll keep an eye on Invest 92L. Again, it could become Tropical Depression 6 or even Tropical Storm Faye at any time. And folks in the areas of the Greater Antilles, the Bahamas, Turks, Caicos, and Florida, as well as the southeast coast, need to keep an eye on it.